I always figured the apocalypse would start with a missed call, not a suitcase. But there it was, sitting by our front door like a black leather accusation. Millie's expensive Samsonite, the one she bought for our honeymoon 3 years ago. The same honeymoon where she spent half the time on conference calls with her law firm. Going somewhere? I asked, though the answer was written all over her face. That particular expression, half guilt, half defiance, was one I'd grown familiar with over the past few months. Camilla Drake McAllister, corporate lawyer extraordinaire, stood in our cramped apartment wearing a designer suit that cost more than my monthly salary. She'd kept her maiden name professionally, which should have been my first warning sign. Now it looked like she was keeping it permanently. "Mac, we need to talk." She smoothed her skirt, a nervous habit that used to be endearing. Now it just looked calculating. "Let me guess," I said, settling into my worn leather chair, the one piece of furniture she'd never managed to replace with her upscale taste. "You need space, time to find yourself. It's not me, it's you. Did I miss any classics?" Her perfectly manicured fingers tightened around her phone. "Don't be sarcastic. This is difficult enough." "Difficult for who exactly?" I leaned back, studying her face. Dave McAllister, cybersecurity engineer, professional problem solver, and apparently amateur marriage counselor. "Because from where I'm sitting, you look like someone who's already made up her mind." The apartment felt smaller suddenly, filled with 3 years of accumulated compromises. Her expensive artwork clashed with my vintage movie posters. Her minimalist furniture made my computer setup look like a teenager's bedroom. Everything about our shared space screamed mismatch. "I've been thinking," she started, then stopped. Thinking. Right, like this was some philosophical breakthrough instead of good old-fashioned betrayal. "Dangerous habit," I muttered. "Mac, please. I'm trying to be honest here." Honest. That was rich. I'd been watching her honesty evolve over the past 2 months. Late nights at the office, weekend client meetings, new perfume that smelled nothing like the vanilla scent she'd worn since college, phone calls that ended abruptly when I walked into the room. "Okay," I said. "Let's hear this honesty." She took a breath, straightening her shoulders like she was addressing a jury. "I think we've grown apart. We want different things. You're comfortable with this." She gestured around our modest apartment. "And I need more." More. There it was, the word that had been hanging between us like smoke. More money, more status, more everything I apparently couldn't provide on an engineer's salary. "More," I repeated. Interesting choice of words. "What's that supposed to mean?" I stood up, walked to the window overlooking our middle-class neighborhood. Mrs. Patterson was walking her ancient poodle. The Kowalski kids were playing basketball in their driveway. Normal people living normal lives, probably not having conversations about needing more. "Nothing," I said. "Just wondering if this revelation came to you during one of those late-night strategy sessions with your boss." The silence stretched long enough for me to count 3 cars passing on the street below. When I turned around, her face had gone pale beneath her foundation. "I don't know what you're implying." "I'm not implying anything, Millie. I'm asking directly. Does this sudden need for space have anything to do with Rick Santino?" Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it instinctively, then caught herself. But I'd already seen the smile that flickered across her face. The same smile she used to save for me. "Rick is my supervisor. We work together." "Right. Work." I nodded slowly. "Is that what we're calling it now?" The apartment's thin walls had never bothered me before, but now I was grateful for them. Whatever happened next, I didn't want the neighbors missing a word. "Mac, you're being paranoid." "Am I?" I pulled out my own phone, scrolled to a number. Should I call Tanya next door? Ask her about the interesting conversation she overheard in the elevator last Tuesday? Millie's composure cracked just slightly. "Tanya's a gossip." "Tanya's observant. There's a difference." I put the phone away. "So let's try this again. You need space, you need more, and coincidentally, your ex-boyfriend who happens to be your boss is suddenly very interested in your career development." "It's not like that." "Then what's it like?" She grabbed her suitcase handle. "I'm staying at a hotel tonight. We can discuss the details later." "Details like what? How long you've been planning this? Whether you're taking the car? Whether you ever actually loved me, or if I was just a placeholder until something better came along?" Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. The words came out harsher than I'd intended, but I was past caring about tone. 3 years of marriage, 5 years together total, and this was how it ended. with a suitcase and corporate speak about personal growth. Mac, don't make this harder than it has to be. Harder than it has to be? I laughed, and it sounded bitter even to me. Millie, you're walking out on our marriage for your ex-boyfriend who drives a Porsche and wears cologne that costs more than our rent. I think we're already at maximum difficulty. She opened the door, then paused. For a moment, I thought she might actually say something real, something honest, something that acknowledged what we'd had before she decided it wasn't enough. Instead, she said, I'll send for the rest of my things. The door closed with a soft click. No slamming, no drama. Just the quiet sound of a life ending. I stood there for a long time, listening to the silence. Then I walked to the bedroom and started looking around. If Millie thought she was taking everything, she had another think coming. That's when I found the phone, a cheap burner hidden in the back of her jewelry drawer. The kind of phone you buy when you don't want your activities traced, when you are planning something that requires secrecy. I turned it on. 47 text messages, 12 voicemails. Photos I definitely didn't take, and not all of them from Rick Santino. I sat on the edge of our bed, my bed now, I supposed, and started reading. Each message was worse than the last, not just cheating, planning, scheming, laughing about the poor sucker who didn't see it coming. That would be me. The poor sucker who worked 60-hour weeks to pay for her law school loans, who supported her through the bar exam, the job hunt, the endless networking events where I stood around like furniture while she worked the room, the poor sucker who actually believed her when she said she loved me. My phone buzzed. A group text to what looked like half her law firm and most of our mutual friends. Moving on to better things, wish you all the best, Mac. Within minutes, the responses started flooding in. Heart emojis. You go, girl. So proud of you. About time. About time. Like our marriage had been some kind of prison sentence she'd finally served. I looked around the apartment again, seeing it through different eyes. Not the home we'd built together, but the launching pad she'd used to get where she really wanted to be. Every compromise, every shared meal, every quiet evening watching movies, all of it just marking time until something better came along. Well, congratulations, Millie. You got what you wanted. But if she thought I was going to disappear quietly into the background of her success story, she had seriously underestimated Dave McAllister. I'd spent 5 years in cybersecurity, learning how information moved, how systems worked, how people's digital lives could be mapped and understood. I'd spent 3 years married to a lawyer, watching her dissect problems, find weaknesses, exploit advantages. She'd taught me well. I picked up the burner phone again, scrolled through the messages one more time. Rick wasn't the only name in there. There were others, colleagues, clients, even the guy who delivered her lunch from that expensive place downtown. Millie hadn't just been cheating. She'd been networking, building her next life while systematically dismantling this one. But here's the thing about systems. They're only as secure as their weakest point, and Millie had just made a critical error. She'd left evidence. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls and a bank account that had been cleaned out faster than a Vegas buffet. Millie might have been sentimental about our marriage, but she was ruthlessly practical about our finances. Or so she thought. I made coffee, real coffee, not the expensive organic stuff she insisted on, and called my bank. The conversation was brief and illuminating. Mr. McAllister? Yes, your wife was here yesterday. She withdrew the maximum daily amount and transferred the rest to her personal account. Since both names are on the account, she had every right, I finished. I understand, thank you. I hung up and smiled. Millie had always been thorough, but she'd missed something important. The joint account she'd emptied was our checking account, where we kept monthly expenses. Our real savings, the money I'd been quietly moving into investment accounts over the past 2 years, was somewhere she'd never thought to look. Call it paranoia, call it preparation. Call it the wisdom of a man who'd grown up watching his father get taken to the cleaners by wife number 2. My phone rang. Pete from work. Mac, buddy, I just saw Millie's post. You okay? Define okay? Well, you're not drunk dialing your ex-girlfriends or posting angry rants on social media, so you're ahead of most guys in your situation. Pete had been divorced twice. He spoke from experience. It's early yet, I said. Give me time to warm up. Want to grab lunch? I know a place that serves beer with breakfast. Rain check. I've got some errands to run. The first errand was the bank. I closed our remaining joint accounts, transferred everything to accounts with only my name. Then I called our credit card companies. Amazing how quickly you can cancel someone's cards when you're the primary account holder. The second errand was our landlord. Mr. Kowalski was a practical man who appreciated tenants who paid on time and didn't cause problems. When I explained that Millie had moved out and I'd be taking over the lease solo, he just shrugged. Your wife, she always acted like this place was beneath her anyway, he said. You want to stay? We'll work something out. The third errand was more delicate. I drove to Millie's law firm, a gleaming downtown tower that screamed success and billable hours. I'd been there before, for office parties and firm events, always feeling like a tourist in an expensive suit. Today, I felt different, focused. The lobby was all marble and glass, designed to intimidate. I approached the reception desk wearing my best smile and carrying a flower arrangement that had cost me $40. I'd like to surprise my wife, I told the receptionist, a young woman who looked like she'd stepped out of a fashion magazine. Camilla McAllister? She works on the 15th floor. Oh, how sweet, the receptionist beamed. I'll call up and let her know you're here. Actually, I said, leaning closer conspiratorially, I was hoping to surprise her. Could you just tell me where her office is? I promise I won't cause any trouble. 5 minutes later, I was on the 15th floor, flowers in hand, walking past cubicles full of ambitious young lawyers. Millie's office was at the end of the hall, corner position with windows overlooking the city. She'd made it. I knocked on the door frame. She looked up from her computer, and her face went through several expressions in rapid succession. Surprise, annoyance, fear. Mac, what are you doing here? Thought you might want these. I set the flowers on her desk. Congratulations on your promotion. What promotion? The one you're about to get. I mean, you must be moving up in the world, right? New apartment, new lifestyle. These things don't pay for themselves. Her office mate, a thin woman with sharp eyes, was pretending not to listen while obviously hanging on every word. Mac, this isn't the place. Oh, I think it's exactly the place. I sat down in the chair across from her desk, making myself comfortable. I've been thinking about our conversation yesterday, about growth and change and people wanting different things. We should discuss this at home. Which home would that be? The apartment you moved out of, or the hotel you're staying at, or maybe we should meet at Rick's place? The sharp-eyed woman's typing stopped entirely. Mac, please. Please what? Please pretend I don't know what's going on. Please act like a good little husband and disappear quietly. I leaned forward. Here's the thing, Millie. I'm not good at pretending. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it automatically, and I saw her face soften into that same smile I'd noticed yesterday. Expecting someone? I asked loudly enough for half the floor to hear. It's work. Right, work. I stood up. Well, I won't keep you from your very important work. But Millie, next time you decide to clean out our bank account, you might want to make sure you actually know where all the money is. I left her sitting there with her mouth open and her office mate staring. By the time I reached the elevator, I could hear urgent whispering from the direction of her office. The afternoon brought a series of increasingly frantic phone calls. Mac, what did you do to our accounts? I protected my assets. Seemed like the prudent thing to do, given the circumstances. You can't just freeze me out? Actually, I can. Funny thing about joint accounts. Either party can close them. I learned that from a lawyer I used to know. This is ridiculous. I need access to those funds. For what? Hotel bills? Designer clothes? Gas for Rick's Porsche? Silence. Mac, we need to talk about this reasonably. I tried reasonable yesterday. You left with a suitcase and a smile. Now we're doing things my way. I hung up and immediately got a text from a number I didn't recognize. This is childish. Grow up. I texted back, This is Millie, right? Or should I say, this is burner phone Millie, the one who's been coordinating her exit strategy for months. No response. But 20 minutes later, my own phone started buzzing with notifications. Social media posts, tagged photos, comments on posts I'd never made. Someone had been busy creating a very unflattering digital portrait of Dave McAllister. My supposed dating profile on 3 different apps. Photos of me at bars I'd never been to, with women I'd never met. Comments on my work's social media that made me sound like a creep. Reviews of restaurants claiming I'd been rude to servers. It was thorough, creative, and completely fabricated. But it was also sloppy. I spent the evening documenting everything, taking screenshots, tracing IP addresses. Millie was smart, but she wasn't tech smart. Every fake post, every manufactured piece of evidence left digital fingerprints. By midnight, I had a complete map of her campaign against me. Not just the social media stuff, but emails to our mutual friends, messages to my coworkers, even a complaint filed with my company's HR department claiming I'd been unstable lately. She was trying to destroy my reputation before I could damage hers. Too late. I opened my laptop and started typing. If Millie wanted to play information warfare, she'd picked the wrong opponent. I'd been protecting systems from attacks for 5 years. I knew how to trace sources, document evidence, and build airtight cases. More importantly, I knew how to be patient. The burner phone I'd found wasn't just evidence of cheating, it was a roadmap to everyone she'd been talking to, everyone she'd been manipulating, everyone who thought they were part of her inner circle, including her sister, Tessa. According to the messages, Tessa had been feeding Millie information about me for months. My schedule, my habits, my weaknesses. The two sisters had been planning this exit strategy like a military operation, but Tessa had also been sharing some interesting information about Millie. Details about her relationship with Rick that went back further than anyone knew. Financial arrangements that looked suspiciously like bribery. And photos that would make even Rick's wife Elena very, very interested. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found Tessa's number. Mac, it's kind of late. I know. I was hoping we could talk. About Millie. A pause. What about her? I think you know. Another pause, longer this time. Where do you want to meet? Tessa Drake looked nothing like her sister. Where Millie was polished and controlled, Tessa was wild energy barely contained in designer jeans and a leather jacket. She slid into the booth across from me at the all-night diner like she was preparing for a fight. So, she said. Millie finally pulled the trigger. You don't sound surprised. Honey, I've been watching this train wreck build for months. She signaled the waitress for coffee. Question is, what are you planning to do about it? I studied her face in the fluorescent light. Tessa was 3 years younger than Millie, but she had the kind of street smarts that came from living without a safety net. Where Millie had gone to law school, Tessa had gone to bartending school and learned about human nature from the ground up. Ah, that depends, I said. How much do you know about your sister's extracurricular activities? You mean besides the obvious? Tessa laughed, but there was no humor in it. Max, sweetie, Millie's been planning her escape from your marriage since about 6 months after the wedding. Rick was just the exit strategy. And you helped her. I fed her information. There's a difference. The waitress brought coffee, and Tessa wrapped her hands around the mug like she was trying to warm something deeper than her fingers. But I never signed up for the scorched earth approach. Meaning? Meaning she was supposed to leave clean. Divorce, split assets, everyone moves on. Instead, she's trying to destroy your reputation, steal everything you've got, and paint you as the villain in her little success story. I pulled out the burner phone and set it on the table between us. Tessa's eyes widened. Where did you get that? She left it behind. Careless of her. Mac, you can't just what? Defend myself? Document evidence? Fight back when someone tries to ruin my life? Tessa picked up the phone, scrolled through a few messages. Her face got paler with each screen. She's lost her mind, she whispered. Some of this stuff... Mac, this isn't just about leaving you. She's been setting up Rick, too. How so? Look at these messages from 3 weeks ago. She's been feeding him inside information about client cases, helping him manipulate outcomes. If this gets out, it won't just end his career, it'll put him in prison. I leaned back in the booth. And Millie? She's been documenting everything, building a case file. I think she's planning to blackmail him. The pieces started falling into place. Millie hadn't just been cheating on me with Rick. She'd been playing a much longer game. Use Rick to advance her career, use me to provide financial stability, then eliminate both of us when she was ready to move to the next level. There's more, Tessa said quietly. She's been seeing other people, too. Clients, mostly. Rich ones. Networking. That's what she calls it. Tessa's voice was bitter. I call it something else. We sat in silence for a while, drinking coffee and watching late-night traffic through the diner's windows. Finally, Tessa spoke again. What are you going to do? I'm going to give Millie exactly what she wants, I said. A war. The next morning, I called in sick to work and drove to Rick's office building. Not to confront him, that would come later. Today was about reconnaissance. Rick Santino was everything I wasn't. Tall, handsome in that artificial way that came from expensive grooming and regular gym sessions. He drove a silver Porsche, wore suits that cost more than my monthly salary, and had the kind of confidence that came from never having to worry about money. He was also predictable. I spent 3 hours in the parking garage, watching his patterns. Rick arrived at exactly 9:15 every morning, parked in the same spot, and spent 5 minutes on his phone before going inside. He left for lunch at 12:30, always alone, always to the same upscale restaurant 2 blocks away. At 12:35, I was standing next to his car with a bag of groceries and a very specific plan. The Porsche was Rick's pride and joy. He washed it twice a week, waxed it monthly, and treated it better than most people treated their children, which made what I was about to do particularly satisfying. I opened the bag and pulled out 2 pounds of frozen shrimp. the kind that gets really pungent when it thaws in a warm, enclosed space. Like the interior of a car with the heat running. It took me less than 2 minutes to distribute the shrimp throughout the Porsche's ventilation system, under the seats, and in the door panels. By the time Rick came back from lunch, his precious car would smell like a fish market in August. But that was just the opening move. I spent the afternoon creating social media accounts under Rick's name. Not fake accounts, real ones, using his actual information and photos I'd pulled from his company website. Then I started posting. Just cleaned out my car. Amazing how much seafood you can fit in a Porsche. Lash crabbin' with Rico. Sabotage, living my best life. Pro tip, frozen shrimp makes the best car air freshener. Trust me on this one. Life hacks. Porsche life. Nothing says success like the smell of the ocean in your luxury vehicle. Blessed Ocher shrimp life. Each post was accompanied by photos of Rick's car, taken from angles that made it clear this was his actual vehicle. Within an hour, the posts were getting likes, comments, and shares from people who thought this was either hilarious or completely insane. At 3:45, I positioned myself across the street from the parking garage with a clear view of Rick's car. At 4 high, he emerged from the building, walking with his usual swagger. I had my phone ready. Rick approached his car, keys in hand, still talking on his phone. He opened the driver's door and... the expression on his face was worth every minute of planning. Disgust, confusion, and rage played across his features as the smell hit him. He stumbled backward, holding his nose, and started shouting at no one in particular. I recorded every second. Other people in the garage started gathering, drawn by the commotion. Someone else was recording too. Within minutes, there were 6 phones pointed at Rick as he tried to figure out what had happened to his car. "This is sabotage!" he shouted. "Someone did this deliberately." "Dude," said a kid with a skateboard. "Didn't you post about putting shrimp in your car? I saw it on Instagram." Rick pulled out his phone, and I watched his face go from red to purple as he discovered his new social media presence. "I didn't post this. Someone hacked my accounts." But the damage was done. The crowd was laughing, phones were recording, and Samar Sex and Crabbin' with Rico was already starting to trend locally. I uploaded my video to every platform I could think of, tagged it with Rick's name and company, and sat back to watch it spread. By 6 p.m., Rick's smelly car incident had been viewed 12,000 times. By 8 p.m., local news stations were picking it up as a feel-good story about social media pranks. By 10 p.m., Rick's law firm's phone was ringing with clients asking if this was the kind of professionalism they could expect. And at 10:30, Millie called. "Mac, what did you do?" "I gave your boyfriend a memorable day. Did you see the video? This is insane. You can't just what? Fight back? Defend myself? Use the same tactics you've been using against me? That's different. How is it different, Millie? You tried to destroy my reputation with fake social media posts. I documented Rick's actual behavior. You spread lies about me to our friends. I shared the truth about Rick with the internet." "You're making this personal," I laughed. "Millie, you made this personal the moment you decided to cheat on me with your ex-boyfriend. I'm just evening the odds. This has to stop." "You're right. It does. All you have to do is call off your campaign against me, return the money you took from our accounts, and we can have a civilized divorce." "I can't do that." "Then it doesn't stop. In fact, it gets worse." I hung up and immediately got a text from Tessa. "Holy crap, did you see the news? Rick's car thing is everywhere." I texted back, "Just getting started." The next morning brought an interesting development. Rick's wife Elena called me. "Mr. McAllister, this is Elena Santino. I believe we need to talk." Elena Santino was everything Millie aspired to be. Old money, social connections, and the kind of quiet power that came from never having to prove anything to anyone. She was also, according to the messages on Millie's burner phone, completely unaware of her husband's extracurricular activities. Until now. We met at a coffee shop in her neighborhood, the kind of place where a cup of coffee cost $8 and came with a lecture about sustainable farming practices. Elena arrived precisely on time, wearing understated elegance like armor. "Mr. McAllister," she said, settling into the chair across from me. "I saw your husband's unfortunate incident yesterday." "My husband?" "A slip of the tongue, your wife's companion." Elena had done her homework. "I assume you're aware of the situation between Rick and Camilla?" "I became aware of it yesterday, yes, along with several other situations I was previously ignorant of." She pulled out an envelope and set it on the table between us. "I've been married to Rick for 15 years. I'm not naive about his appetites, but I am particular about discretion." I opened the envelope. Inside were photographs, documents, and what looked like financial records. Rick has been careless, Elena continued. Sloppy. Your wife isn't his first affair, but she may be his most dangerous. The documents showed a pattern of behavior going back years. Affairs with clients, financial irregularities, ethical violations that would end his career if they became public. Why are you showing me this? Because, Mr. McAllister, I believe in proportional response. Rick has embarrassed me. Your wife has participated in that embarrassment. I think it's time they both learned about consequences. Elena Santino was offering me an alliance. Her resources, her connections, her intimate knowledge of Rick's weaknesses, in exchange for my technical skills and my very personal motivation for revenge. What did you have in mind? She smiled, and for the first time, I understood why Rick had married her. Elena Santino wasn't just wealthy and connected. She was ruthless. I think it's time Rick's clients learned about his business practices, and I think it's time your wife's colleagues learned about her networking strategies. We spent the next 2 hours planning. By the time we parted ways, Millie and Rick's world was about to get much smaller, and we were just getting started. The beauty of having an ally like Elena Santino was access. While I was limited to what I could discover through public records and digital forensics, Elena had 15 years of marriage to draw from. She knew Rick's passwords, his habits, his secrets, and most importantly, his weaknesses. Rick keeps everything, she told me over lunch at a restaurant that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Every document, every photo, every piece of correspondence. He thinks it makes him powerful, having information on everyone. Blackmail material? Insurance policies. Rick's paranoid about being betrayed, so he documents everything that could be used against his enemies. Elena smiled coldly. He never considered that it could be used against him. She slid a flash drive across the table. 5 years of Rick's private files, client information, case details, financial records, and some very interesting personal communications. I pocketed the drive. What about Millie? Your wife has been busy. According to these files, she's been feeding Rick inside information about her firm's clients, helping him poach cases and manipulate outcomes. She's also been entertaining several of Rick's wealthier clients. Entertaining? Dinners, parties, weekend trips, always with Rick present, always technically professional, but the expense reports tell a different story. Elena was right. Millie hadn't just been cheating, she'd been running a sophisticated operation using her marriage to me as cover while she built relationships with Rick's client base. There's something else, Elena continued. Rick's been skimming from client accounts. Small amounts, spread across multiple cases, but it adds up to nearly $200,000 over 3 years. Embezzlement. Among other things. The question is, what do you want to do with this information? I thought about Millie's smug group text, her systematic campaign to destroy my reputation, her assumption that I would just disappear quietly into the background of her success story. I want them to understand what it feels like to lose everything. The first phase was subtle. I created anonymous email accounts and started sending Rick's client files to the State Bar Association, the IRS, and several investigative journalists who specialized in legal corruption. Not all at once, that would look coordinated. Instead, I spread the releases over several days, making it look like multiple sources were coming forward independently. The second phase was more personal. Using Elena's access to Rick's accounts, I started posting on his social media profiles. Nothing obviously fake, just embarrassing truths presented in the worst possible light. Excited to announce my new business strategy. Why earn clients when you can steal them? Entrepreneurship, living my best life. Pro tip, always keep detailed records of your illegal activities. You never know when you might need them. Organization matters. Nothing says success like embezzling from your own clients. Oh, blessed life, money talks. Each post was accompanied by screenshots from Rick's own files, presented as if he was bragging about his criminal activities. The posts were getting thousands of views, hundreds of comments, and increasing attention from local news outlets. But the third phase was the most satisfying. I waited until Friday afternoon, when Millie would be at her weekly team meeting, then called her law firm's main number. Good afternoon, Morrison, Klein & Associates. Yes, I'd like to speak with someone about Camilla McAllister's recent work with Rick Santino's firm. I'm sorry, who is this? This is David Chen from the State Ethics Board. We're investigating some irregularities in case referrals between the two firms, and Ms. McAllister's name has come up several times. There was no David Chen at the State Ethics Board, but there was enough truth in the statement to make it believable. Within an hour, Millie was in her supervisor's office explaining her relationship with Rick and his clients. By Monday morning, she was on administrative leave pending an internal investigation. "Mac, what did you do?" Her voice was shrill, desperate. "I reported suspicious activity to the appropriate authorities. Isn't that what any concerned citizen would do?" "There's no David Chen at the ethics board." "Isn't there? I'd check again if I were you. Government websites can be tricky to navigate." I'd spent Sunday night creating a comprehensive fake identity for David Chen, complete with official-looking credentials and a trail of digital breadcrumbs that would take weeks to unravel. By the time anyone figured out the deception, the real investigation would be well underway. This is harassment. This is accountability. You wanted to play in the big leagues, Millie. Welcome to professional consequences. The beautiful thing about targeting someone's career is that once you plant seeds of doubt, the system does most of the work for you. Millie's firm couldn't ignore potential ethical violations, especially not with Rick's scandal making headlines. They had to investigate, which meant scrutinizing every case she'd worked on, every client she'd interacted with, every decision she'd made. And Millie's files were full of irregularities, client information shared inappropriately, case strategies that seemed to benefit Rick's firm more than her own clients, billing records that didn't match her actual activities, travel expenses that looked more like personal vacations than business trips. Within a week, Millie's carefully constructed career was unraveling faster than a cheap sweater. But Rick's situation was even worse. The State Bar Association had launched a formal investigation. The IRS was auditing his firm's finances. 3 major clients had terminated their contracts. His law firm's partners were demanding his resignation, and Elena was filing for divorce. "I want to thank you," she told me over coffee. "I've been looking for an excuse to end this marriage for years. Rick's public humiliation gives me all the leverage I need." "What about the financial settlement?" "Rick will be lucky to avoid prison. I'll get everything, the house, the investments, the business assets. He'll be starting over from nothing." Elena was right. Rick's world was collapsing in spectacular fashion, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. Every move he made to defend himself only revealed more evidence of his wrongdoing. But Millie wasn't finished fighting. On Thursday afternoon, she showed up at my apartment with reinforcements. Her parents, Robert and Patricia Drake. Old money, social connections, and the kind of understated power that came from generations of privilege. "David," Robert Drake said, settling into my living room like he owned it, "we need to discuss this situation rationally." "Which situation would that be, Mr. Drake?" "This vendetta against our daughter. It needs to stop." Patricia Drake looked around my modest apartment with barely concealed distaste. "Camilla made a mistake, but this response is disproportionate." "Disproportionate?" I laughed. "Your daughter tried to destroy my reputation, steal my assets, and frame me for harassment. I documented her actual criminal behavior and reported it to the authorities. Which part seems disproportionate to you?" "The criminal behavior allegation is absurd," Robert said. "Camilla is a respected attorney." "Who's currently on administrative leave for ethics violations," I interrupted. "Who was caught sharing confidential client information with her boyfriend? Who was participating in a scheme to defraud clients and manipulate legal outcomes?" "You can't prove any of that." I walked to my desk and pulled out a folder thick with printed emails, financial records, and photographs. "Actually, I can prove all of it. Would you like to see the evidence, or would you prefer to keep pretending your daughter is the victim here?" The room went quiet. Robert Drake was a successful businessman who understood leverage when he saw it. Patricia Drake was a social climber who understood reputation management. They both understood that I held all the cards. "What do you want?" Robert asked finally. "I want Millie to stop her campaign against me. I want her to return the money she took from our accounts. And I want her to accept responsibility for her actions instead of trying to blame everyone else." "And in return?" "In return, I won't release the really damaging evidence to the media." It was a bluff, mostly. The worst evidence was already in the hands of investigators and journalists. But the Drakes didn't know that. "This is extortion," Patricia said. "This is negotiation. Your daughter started a war she couldn't win. I'm offering her terms for surrender." Millie had been silent through the entire conversation, but now she spoke up. "I'm not surrendering to you." "Then you're going to lose everything. Your career, your reputation, your freedom. Is your pride really worth that much?" "This isn't over, Mac." "You're right," I said. "It's not. But the next phase won't be as gentle as this one." After they left, I sat in my apartment and considered my options. Millie was too stubborn to accept defeat, which meant the war would continue. Rick was finished. His career, his marriage, his reputation all destroyed beyond repair. But Millie still had fight left in her. That was fine with me. I was just getting warmed up. My phone buzzed with a text from Tessa. Heard my parents visited you. How did that go? I texted back, about as well as expected. Your sister's not ready to quit. Neither are you, I'm guessing. Not even close. Good, because I have something you're going to want to see. Tessa met me at the same diner where we'd had our first conversation, but this time she looked nervous. She kept checking her phone and glancing toward the door like she expected someone to follow her. Millie's lost it, she said without preamble. Completely, totally lost her mind. Define lost it. She's planning to frame you for cybercrime, hacking, identity theft, harassment. She's got a whole list of charges she thinks she can make stick. I leaned back in the booth. With what evidence? She's creating it. Fake emails, doctored screenshots, manufactured digital trails. She's even hired someone to plant evidence on your computer. When? Tomorrow. While you're at work. She still has a key to your apartment. I smiled. Actually, she doesn't. I changed the locks last week. Mac, you're not taking this seriously. She's not just trying to embarrass you anymore. She's trying to put you in prison. Tessa was right. This had escalated beyond divorce drama into criminal territory. Millie was desperate enough to commit felonies if it meant destroying me. What exactly is she planning? She's got some tech guy, a hacker she found online, who's going to break into your apartment and plant evidence on your computers, fake communications, illegal software, traces of activity that will make it look like you've been stalking her and Rick for months. And then? Then she calls the police, claims she's been receiving threatening messages, and points them toward your apartment. When they search it, they find all the evidence she planted. It was a sophisticated plan, and it might actually work. Digital evidence was hard to dispute, especially when it was planted by someone who knew what they were doing. There's more, Tessa continued. She's been working with Rick to coordinate their stories. They're both going to claim you've been harassing them, threatening them, trying to destroy their careers out of jealousy. Rick's career is already destroyed. But not by criminal harassment. If they can make the cybercrime charges stick, it discredits everything you've revealed about them. Suddenly you're not a wronged husband exposing the truth. You're a criminal stalker who fabricated evidence. I had to admit, it was clever. Millie had learned from watching her world collapse. Now she was trying to turn the tables by making me the criminal. When is this supposed to happen? Tomorrow afternoon. The hacker is going to break in around 2 o'clock when you're normally at work. And you know this how? Tessa looked uncomfortable. Because Millie asked me to provide your schedule, and because I've been recording our conversations for the past month. She pulled out her phone and played a recording of Millie's voice. I don't care if it's illegal, Tessa. Mac destroyed my life, and I'm going to destroy his. By the time I'm finished, he'll be in prison, and everyone will know what kind of person he really is. Why are you helping me? Because I'm tired of watching my sister destroy everything she touches, and because what she's planning isn't just wrong, it's insane. I thought about it. Millie was desperate, which made her dangerous. But desperation also made people careless. I need you to do something for me, I said. The next day, I called in sick to work and spent the morning setting up cameras throughout my apartment. Not obvious security cameras, those would be too easy to spot. Instead, I used small, wireless cameras that looked like everyday objects. A clock on the bookshelf, a picture frame on the desk, a smoke detector on the ceiling. Then I left the apartment and drove to a coffee shop 3 blocks away, where I could monitor the camera feeds on my laptop. At 1:45 p.m., a van pulled up outside my building. 2 men got out, one carrying a toolbox, the other with a laptop bag. They looked professional, like maintenance workers or cable installers. At 1:52 p.m., they were inside my apartment. I watched them work through the camera feeds. They were good, methodical, careful, clearly experienced at this kind of operation. The first man went straight to my computer setup and started installing software while the second man planted physical evidence throughout the apartment. Fake USB drives hidden in drawers, printed emails tucked into books, a notebook with handwritten threats against Millie and Rick, written in handwriting that was close enough to mine to be convincing. They worked for exactly 47 minutes, then left as quietly as they'd arrived. At 3:15 p.m., I called the police. I'd like to report a break-in, I told the dispatcher. Someone was in my apartment while I was at work. Was anything stolen, sir? I'm not sure yet, but I have security footage of the intruders. The responding officers were thorough and professional. They took my statement, examined the apartment for signs of forced entry, and reviewed the camera footage I'd captured. Do you have any idea who might have done this? Officer Martinez asked. I'm going through a difficult divorce, I said. My wife has been upset about some recent developments. Has she threatened you? Not directly, but she's been trying to damage my reputation, and she's been acting increasingly desperate. I gave them copies of the camera footage and filed a formal complaint. Then I went home and waited. At 6:30 p.m., Millie called the police to report that she'd been receiving threatening messages from her estranged husband. At 7:15 p.m., Detective Sarah Williams called me. "Mr. McAllister, we need to talk about some allegations that have been made against you." "What kind of allegations?" "Harassment, cyberstalking, making threats. Your wife has provided some evidence that we need to investigate." "I see. Would you like me to come to the station?" "That would be helpful, yes." I arrived at the police station with a lawyer, not because I needed one, but because it looked responsible. Detective Williams was a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s who'd clearly seen every kind of domestic dispute imaginable. "Mr. McAllister, your wife claims you've been sending her threatening messages and harassing her at work. She's provided us with evidence of these communications." "What kind of evidence?" Williams showed me printed emails, text messages, and social media posts that allegedly came from my accounts. They were well-crafted, angry enough to be believable, but not quite explicit enough to be obviously fake. "These are very serious allegations," Williams said. "Cyberstalking is a felony." "Detective, I reported a break-in at my apartment this afternoon. Did you receive that report?" "Yes, but—" "And I provided security footage of 2 men planting evidence in my home. Have you reviewed that footage?" Williams looked confused. "What does that have to do with these harassment allegations?" I pulled out my laptop and opened the video files. "These are the men who broke into my apartment this afternoon. Watch what they're doing." The footage was clear and damning. 2 men systematically planting evidence throughout my apartment, installing software on my computers, staging a crime scene designed to support exactly the allegations Millie was now making. "The timing is interesting," I continued. "They broke in at 2 o'clock. Your wife called you at 6:30, almost like she knew exactly when you'd find the evidence she wanted you to find." Williams studied the footage carefully. "Do you know who these men are?" "I believe they're associates of my wife's boyfriend, Rick Santino. He's currently under investigation for embezzlement and ethics violations." "This is a serious accusation, Mr. McAllister." "It's a serious crime, Detective. My wife and her boyfriend attempted to frame me for felonies I didn't commit. They hired criminals to break into my home and plant evidence. They filed false police reports and perjured themselves in official statements." I handed her a folder containing everything: the security footage, records of the break-in, documentation of Millie and Rick's scheme, and recordings of their conversations that Tessa had provided. "I want to file charges for conspiracy, breaking and entering, planting evidence, filing false reports, and attempted fraud." Williams spent an hour reviewing the evidence. When she finished, her expression had changed completely. "Mr. McAllister, we're going to need you to make a formal statement, and we're going to need to arrest your wife." At 9:45 p.m., Camilla Drake McAllister was arrested at her hotel on charges of conspiracy to commit fraud, filing false police reports, and hiring criminals to plant evidence. At 10:15 p.m., Rick Santino was arrested at his apartment on the same charges, plus embezzlement and ethics violations. At 10:30 p.m., I was standing in the parking lot of the police station, breathing free air and thinking about justice. My phone buzzed with a text from Tessa. "Saw the news. Are you okay?" I texted back, "Better than okay. It's over." But even as I typed the words, I knew they weren't true. This wasn't over. It was just the beginning of the end. 3 weeks later, I was living in Rick's former penthouse apartment. Elena had bought it at the foreclosure auction and offered it to me at a price I couldn't refuse. Free, in exchange for testifying at Rick's criminal trial. "Consider it a thank you gift," she'd said. "Rick always loved this place more than he loved me. I think there's poetic justice in you living here." The penthouse was everything my old apartment wasn't. Spacious, luxurious, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. It was also equipped with a state-of-the-art security system, which turned out to be more necessary than I'd expected, because Rick had made bail, and he was not handling his new circumstances well. I first noticed the surveillance on a Tuesday morning. A black sedan parked across the street. Same driver for 3 consecutive days. Phone calls that ended abruptly when I answered. Delivery trucks that never actually delivered anything. Rick was watching me, planning something. The question was, what? I got my answer on Friday night. I was in the penthouse kitchen, making dinner and enjoying the view when the building's security system chimed. Someone had entered the lobby without being buzzed in. The elevator was coming up. To my floor, I checked the security monitors. Rick Santino stood in the elevator, looking like he hadn't slept in days. His expensive suit was wrinkled. his hair uncombed, and his eyes had the wild look of a man who'd lost everything and had nothing left to lose. He was also carrying something in his right hand. I activated the penthouse's lockdown protocol: steel shutters over the windows, reinforced locks on all doors, and a direct line to building security. Then I called the police. 911, what's your emergency? This is Dave McAllister at the Meridian Tower penthouse. Someone just broke into the building and is coming to my apartment. I have a restraining order against this person. Units are on the way, sir. Stay on the line. The elevator stopped at my floor. I watched through the security monitor as Rick approached my door. He looked directly into the camera and smiled. Not a pleasant expression. Then he started pounding on the door. Mac, I know you're in there. Open up. We need to talk. His voice was slurred, either from alcohol or exhaustion or both. Mac, you destroyed my life. You took everything from me. The least you can do is face me like a man. I stayed on the phone with the 911 operator while Rick continued his rant. He was getting more agitated, more unstable. Whatever he'd planned to say when he got here was dissolving into incoherent rage. You think you're so smart, he shouted. You think you won, but I still have one card to play. That's when I saw what he was holding. A small device with wires and a digital display. It looked homemade, dangerous, and completely insane. Rick, I called through the door. Whatever you're thinking of doing, it's not going to fix anything. Fix anything? Mac, I'm not trying to fix anything. I'm trying to finish it. I could hear sirens in the distance, getting closer. But Rick was beyond reasoning now. You want to know the truth, Mac? Your wife was never cheating on you with me. She was using me just like she used you. She's been playing us both from the beginning. What are you talking about? Millie's pregnant, Mac. Has been for 2 months. And it's not mine. The words hit me like a physical blow. Pregnant. For 2 months. Which meant... She's been planning this whole thing for months, Rick continued. The divorce, the frame-up, everything. She needed both of us out of the picture so she could disappear with her real boyfriend and start over somewhere else. I thought about the timeline. Millie's sudden distance, her late nights at the office, her new perfume. Not signs of an affair with Rick, signs of an affair with someone else entirely. Who? I called through the door. Ask her yourself. She's right here. That's when I heard the second voice. Millie, somewhere in the hallway, talking urgently to Rick. Rick, put that down. This isn't the plan. You're supposed to be at the airport. The plan changed, sweetheart. Mac figured out too much, too fast. Now we're doing this my way. I switched the security monitor to the hallway camera and saw them both. Rick with his homemade device, Millie in travel clothes with a suitcase, both of them looking desperate and dangerous. The police are on their way, I called out. Whatever you're planning, it's over. No, Mac. Millie's voice was cold, controlled. It's just beginning. The building's fire alarm started blaring. Someone had pulled the alarm on a lower floor, which would bring the fire department and evacuate the building. But it would also create chaos, confusion, the perfect cover for whatever Rick and Millie were planning. I heard footsteps in the hallway, multiple people moving around. More than just Rick and Millie. Then the lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in an eerie red glow. The building's main power had been cut, which meant the elevators were down and the security system was running on backup power. Someone had planned this very carefully. I moved away from the door and took cover behind the kitchen island. The penthouse had multiple rooms, multiple exit routes, and plenty of places to hide. But I was trapped on the 32nd floor with no way down except the stairs. And Rick was between me and the stairs. Mac! Millie's voice was closer now. We just want to talk. Open the door and nobody gets hurt. I almost laughed. Nobody gets hurt. Right. That's why Rick was carrying what looked like a homemade explosive device. The pounding on the door resumed, more violent now. Multiple people trying to break down the reinforced steel door. It would hold for a while, but not forever. I needed a different plan. The penthouse had a balcony, a wraparound terrace with a spectacular view of the city. It also had a maintenance ladder that led to the roof, installed for window washers and building repairs. It was dangerous, especially 32 floors up, but it was better than waiting for Rick's improvised device to blow the door off its hinges. I grabbed my phone, my keys, and the folder of evidence I'd been keeping as insurance. Then I headed for the balcony. The night air was cold and windy, with storm clouds building on the horizon. Lightning flickered in the distance, and I could smell rain coming. Perfect weather for a final confrontation. I climbed the maintenance ladder to the roof, then used my phone to call building security. This is Dave McAllister in the penthouse. I'm on the roof. There are intruders in my apartment with what looks like an explosive device. Sir, we're aware of the situation. Police and fire department are on scene. Stay where you are and don't try to be a hero. Too late for that advice. I could hear voices from the penthouse below. Rick and Millie had gotten inside and were searching for me. When they realized I wasn't there, they'd figure out where I'd gone. Sure enough, 5 minutes later, Rick's head appeared at the top of the maintenance ladder. There you are, Mac. Come down here. We're not finished talking. I think we've said everything we need to say, Rick. He climbed onto the roof, still carrying his device. Up close, I could see it was even more improvised than I'd thought. Duct tape, wires, and what looked like road flares bundled together. Risky, but probably not as harmful as he wanted me to believe. You know what your problem is, Mac. You think you're smarter than everyone else. You think you can manipulate people and there won't be consequences. I think you're confusing me with yourself, Rick. Millie appeared at the ladder, breathing hard from the climb. She looked different, older, more desperate, with the kind of exhaustion that came from running out of options. Mac, she said, we can still fix this. All of it. The charges, the divorce, everything. How exactly would we fix attempted murder and conspiracy? Nobody tried to commit murder, she said. Rick's device isn't even real. It's just road flares and wires. We needed you to take us seriously. I looked at Rick, who was holding his explosive like it was the most dangerous thing in the world. Is that true, Rick? His face flushed red. It doesn't matter what it is. The point is you've both lost your minds, I interrupted. Millie, you're facing felony charges for the evidence planting scheme. Rick, you're looking at prison time for embezzlement, and now you've added breaking and entering, making terrorist threats, and whatever other charges the DA decides to pile on. We had a plan, Millie shouted. A good plan. We were going to disappear, start over somewhere else, leave all this mess behind. With whose money? Rick's accounts are frozen. Your trust fund is tied up in legal proceedings. What were you going to live on? We had other resources, she said quietly. You mean the baby's father, your real boyfriend, the one who's been funding this whole operation. Millie's face went white. How did you... I'm a cybersecurity expert, Millie. I investigate things for a living. Did you really think I wouldn't figure out that you've been playing 3 different men against each other? Rick turned to stare at Millie. 3 men? Mac, me, and who else? Why don't you ask her? The storm was getting closer. Lightning was flashing every few seconds now, and thunder was rolling across the sky. The first drops of rain started to fall. Millie, Rick's voice was dangerous. Who else? It doesn't matter now, she said. The plan failed. We're all going to prison. Not all of us, I said. I documented everything. Every crime, every conspiracy, every lie. I've got recordings, photographs, financial records, witness statements. The DA has enough evidence to put both of you away for years. So what do you want? Millie asked. Revenge? To watch us destroy ourselves? I thought about it. 3 weeks ago, I would have said yes. I wanted them to suffer the way they'd made me suffer. I wanted them to lose everything the way they'd tried to make me lose everything. But standing on the roof, watching 2 people who'd completely destroyed their lives out of greed and desperation, I realized something. They'd already lost everything. Their careers, their reputations, their freedom, their future. They'd sacrificed everything for a plan that was doomed from the start. I don't want anything from you, I said finally. You've already given me everything I needed. What's that supposed to mean? It means you taught me exactly who you really are, both of you, and now everyone else knows it too. The rain was falling harder now, making the roof slippery and dangerous. Lightning cracked overhead, close enough to make us all flinch. We should go inside, I said. The police are waiting. Rick looked at his improvised device, then at Millie, then at me. For a moment, I thought he might actually try to use it, fake or not. Instead, he threw it over the edge of the building. We watched it fall 32 floors, spinning end over end, until it disappeared into the darkness below. It's over, he said quietly. Yeah, I agreed. It is. We climbed down from the roof together. Rick first, then Millie, then me. The police were waiting in the penthouse, along with paramedics and fire department personnel. As they led Rick and Millie away in handcuffs, Detective Williams approached me. You okay, Mr. McAllister? Better than okay, I said, watching the lightning illuminate the city below. I'm free. And for the first time in months, that was completely true. I stood at the penthouse window, watching the storm rage outside, thinking about justice and revenge and the difference between the two. Rick and Millie had gotten exactly what they deserved, not because I'd destroyed them, but because they'd destroyed themselves. Some people need to hit rock bottom, I thought. I just made sure the rocks were sharp. The storm was passing now, moving east toward the ocean. Tomorrow would be clear.